Bon dia, Carl Munson here on the Good Morning Portugal show from expatsportugal.com, and joining me as a guest, and really because he's done this so many times before and is so popular with his community, Paul Correa from Fiduciary Wealth Management, my co-host and guest. How are you doing, Paul?
Very well, Carl. Thank you very much. And you? Long time no see, long time no speak.
It does feel like we haven't seen each other for quite some time, but there's also a familiarity between us, I'd like to think as well, like a pair of old warm slippers that are very reassuring on an autumn night.
Exactly. I think you summed it up perfectly well. At least it feels that way, yeah?
Yes.
On my side, may I hasten to add, yeah?
No, I understand, but I would echo that sentiment. So Paul's here, and some of you who do know that he's in the world of wealth management, as the name of the company suggests, Fiduciary Wealth Management. Find them in our business directory. Those of you who don't know him, what happened? Where have you been? Paul, perhaps you could do a brief introduction to you and your work, and what an exciting day looks like for you in your office there.
Well, we the business is now trying to go digital, so we're trying to have a strong footprint digitally in our key markets. So we're trying to productize all our offers and trying to expand our outreach, but not with physical resources, but through the World Wide Web, because I think that's how most businesses are going. Yeah, if you look look at all the high street stores, London, the key capitals, whether look at the US with Macy's. Macy's is a superstore, and 20 years ago, I know the price. You can go online and check the price, and the price was soaring. I think it's now trading at maybe 10% of its peak price. So because everyone's going online, you take another one. You might be familiar with that. Do you know the company Sarah with the which is
women's store.
Men's and women's, and it's Ortega. It's the Spanish entrepreneur, and he was a tailor, and it's global. Well, the daughter has taken over the business now. I mean, he's worth, I don't know, one of the top 10 most richest people in the world, and it's decided to close stores in cities where the population is not very significant, and they've gone online because during the pandemic they went online and they were extremely successful, and now they're cutting overheads. Why have so many overheads? They want to maximize their profits, so they're closing down stores in many countries where if the city is not large enough, you have to buy online. So I think what you find is the future is online, and human relationships are key, but you need to have a strong online presence. So a lot of our focus is going into shifting to having a greater footprint in the World Wide Web.
Amazing. That's a great talking point this morning. And it's Ask Anything About Portugal Day, Wednesday. Paul's with me, certainly for the first part of the show. If we get talking and get engaged in stuff, he might stay even longer with your encouragement, folks. So any financial / investment questions for Paul, get them coming in. It's always a great subject. And if we're lucky, Paul might give us a little bit of a tip. It's not investment advice, okay? It's just his how do we put this? It's just what you're doing, right? And what you suggest might people take a look at and exercise their own due diligence, of course. We're not telling anybody what to do here. You can't do that in the financial business. But we can certainly have an interesting conversation this morning. And also, yes, in the audience, our community, if there's something you're thinking, okay, people need to know about this particular investment, I'm sure Paul and I will be very interested, and the others will be interested in that as well. So who's here this morning? Bon dia, everyone. Good morning from Andrea Hogan. We've got people all over the world, as you know, Paul, in the Netherlands, Tom and Andrea, about to embark on their camper van adventure towards Portugal. Expats Portugal are here as well. That's kind of spooky. I wonder who that is. Hola, bon dia, alegria, Andrea. Oh no, that was me before the show started. Relax, everybody. It's okay. We don't have a poltergeist or ghostly activity. Hola from Andrea. Jim White's here from Baltimore in the US. Cindy B, our rather marvelous guest from yesterday, talking about the living room friendship idea on the forum. It's here from Caldas Terrena this morning. Beautiful Caldas Terrena. She adds, Tom is here, as I mentioned. Good morning, everyone, from a very rainy Netherlands. Okay, so our storm that we had yesterday making its way up into Northern Europe by the sound of it. Bon dia. Meus erantes felicius. What does that mean, a midlife crisis? I don't think you've met Midlife Crisis before, Paul. Isn't that a great name for a YouTube channel, the Midlife Crisis?
I think I'm past the midlife crisis now. I'm going into the third stage of... It's a distant memory, that is. Sadly, yeah. The third stage, yeah.
Going into the third stage.
Yeah.
But with that comes wisdom, of course.
Massive wisdom, yeah, I hope.
Watch out, everybody. Massive wisdom on the show this morning. Do you have any fond memories of your midlife crisis? I mean, that's a question for everybody this morning. Did you buy yourself a faster and smarter looking car at that time of your life? No. Too busy doing more important things. Okay, everyone, says Andrew Gilchrist, who's in the UK, I think, as we speak this morning. Which is more humid? Oh, okay. Here's an Ask Anything About Portugal question. So, ask anything about Portugal. Ask anything about investment and finance. With Paul being here this morning from Fiduciary Wealth Management. Which is more humid? This one's for me, I think, Paul. Tamar or Caldas? Well, I would say Tamar. Tamar gets some super heat there, 40 degrees times. Not that Caldas doesn't, but you have the moderating sea breeze that I know Paul will be familiar with in Gibraltar as well. It's nice to have the sea close by, isn't it, to moderate the weather a little bit?
Yeah, it's perfect. It helps.
Oh, yes. A quick update from Gibraltar then, Paul. Gibraltar was very fast to get close to 100% vaccination and deal with the pandemic in a certain way. How's it going over there?
Well, I mean, we had, as you rightly say, we had something like 118% vaccination. You probably wonder how you can have more than 100, and
Yes,
that's because, but there's an explanation, because the cross-border workers were also vaccinated as part of the overall strategy. Because you know, if you have people coming in who are not vaccinated, then you spread it out. So no, we it's been okay. We have kind of unlocked during the summer. Had a bit of tourism coming in. Numbers probably peaked at about 100 odd. They've come down to about 60 or 70. So, you know, I think what we've found is that being vaccinated, as you well know, doesn't preclude you from contracting COVID. All it does is ensure that the symptoms are mild, and it doesn't require, by and large, hospitalizations. Okay. But you know, it's not foolproof by any means. So no, it's good. We're looking forward to receiving news shortly about the autumn vaccine, together with, I think they're going to try and encourage people to have the flu vaccine alongside the booster.
Yeah.
But I think we've effectively unlocked, and now let's see what the autumn and the winter brings, because, you know, with it does bring a high incidence of flu and COVID potentially.
Yeah. Well, we've got to learn to live with this thing, haven't we? I mean, it's not. I think those countries. Yeah, the countries that are looking for zero, you know, and to eradicate. I don't think that's how it works. I mean, as many people now say, I'm not an epidemiologist, but it's. However, it seems to me that taking the zero approach or complete eradication approach is a very hard wicket to bat or a very great challenge, which causes a lot of other pains. I mean, whilst we're about it on the pandemic, it would appear that if anyone had invested in pharmaceuticals a couple of years ago, they'd have done quite well, as they would have done in PPE and that sort of thing. Do you know people who managed to catch that boat, as it were?
No, I don't know personally of anyone that. But I think, I think companies like Moderna, we actually monitored Moderna because they were one of the firms that were trying to develop the vaccine, but we never jumped into buying it for clients. Hindsight is a great thing, but we were keeping an eye on that particular firm because they were quite advanced in their trials, and I think that the share price has increased quite significantly.
Yeah, and anyone who knows you knows that you're a long-term guy, so you're not one to be jumping on a fast-moving trend of that kind, right? Pandemic or not.
No. I think we are macro value investors, and we look at the macro environment, and we buy for value because there's a lot of overvalued assets, and then we hold and wait for the market to turn in our favor because, in this market to be jumping in and out and looking at the latest fad and trying to get in and be too smart is not advisable. I think find undervalued assets, hold on to them, and wait for the market to recognize that those assets have a lot of intrinsic value, and be patient. It's not time in the market, but time in the market.
Oh, hold on. What was that phrase?
It's not timing the market, it's time in the market.
Okay, all right. See, there's that wisdom that we were talking about that comes with the third stage of life. Absolutely brilliant. And looking for undervalued investments and staying the course. Excellent. Okay, I like the cut of that jib there, Paul. Hola, bon dia from Eric J, who's over here at the moment, which is great news. Paul Richards also is in. Oh, I know. Loves to tune in when you're here. Greetings from Harrogate. Hope you two lads, Carl and Paul, are enjoying the nice weather. Is it nice over there in Gibraltar at the moment? Have you had a storm as well?
We had the storm. I think today was supposed to rain, but I think we've woken up and the skies seem clear enough. But I think the Met Office has said that we should expect some thunderstorms later this morning or this afternoon. But I think, once this passes by, I think we're close to. It's been a day or two or three, maybe with a bit of rain. Come on.
Yeah.
We are pampered with. We are privileged to live in this part of the world having great weather. And sometimes, you need a bit of rain just to clear things up a bit.
Yes, absolutely. A great metaphor for life in a way, isn't it? Okay. So, and Andy's asking Eric how the travels are going in there. Excellent so far. I'm so glad to hear that, Eric. Thunderduck is here as well. Hello, mate. Bon dia, alegria from Thunder this morning. Reflecting the weather that has been here in Lisbon in the last couple of days. Bon dia from a wet Belfast this morning from Deagle McKillen. Jacqueline CDM also here. Hola, bon dia a todos. Ooh, Ducky from Andy there. And good morning, Paul. The community greeting each other. That's what's so lovely about our guys here. Bon dia from Stephen Wells as well. And Victoria's here in the United States, but in Savannah this morning. How are your plans going, Victoria? And basically, Stephen saying, anyone. So there's a very universal greeting there from Stephen Wells this morning. Okay, big leap of my comments. Loads coming in. Wolfgang is here. Hey, Wolfgang, good morning to you. Same Wolfgang as I spoke to last night, I wonder, about tantric, this, that, and the other, including sex and sexuality there, Paul. It was an interesting session on spiritual Portugal last night. Oof, says Paul. Good morning, everyone from Francis. Patricia Gorst is here from Scotland as well. Margarita Lopez, bon dia. Overheads equals people. So I think midlife crisis, taking us back to the comments you were making about the high street. This is a global phenomenon. I mean, I want to talk after you've gone today, Paul, about this amazing neighbourhood that I'm staying in at the moment. And you'll hear the gentrification in progress, the sound of drilling, which goes on until about 1 a.m. and then starts up again about 7 a.m. It's intense around here with the investment that's going on. Not a lot of high street action, more about the housing and the workspaces. Some really, really good work hubs being made here. And I'll talk more about that later on in the show. So, I mean, you must have looked at this a lot. I mean, you're looking at retail as a place to maybe avoid rather than invest in, certainly on the high street. And you're looking at those companies that are being innovative and taking it away from that traditional space. How do you see what can happen in high streets around the world? Are they going to be turned into accommodation?
Potentially, yeah. I think it's going to depopulate, or they're turned into residential accommodation. But you look at commercial commercial rent is coming down in some of the capitals, and it continues to do so. I think a lot of firms will eventually go online. Not everywhere, but I think that it's going to be, as you rightly say, a global phenomenon, particularly in the key cities. Yeah. Where I think it'd be interesting. I haven't produced one for this show, but to go online and see the volume of revenue, the amount of revenue that has been driven from the World Wide Web starting in 2000 all the way to 2020, because it must be an upward sloping graph. And I think that will only accelerate with time.
And it's just amazing to speculate on what I mean, who knew? I mean, as a kid, I would go and walk on Oxford Street, in the West End of London. I grew up in London, and it would have been hard to imagine back then in the 80s that anything would ever happen. With Selfridges at one end and Tottenham Court Road at the other, that anything could ever happen to that, bulletproof real estate. But it's changing. It's absolutely changing, isn't it? And I think there will be a mix of residential and other types of attractions. Maybe tourism will return to that in a more holistic way, perhaps, and people will have amazing experiences in the former residential hearts of the cities of the world. What do you think, folks? Let us know. And I think midlife crisis is saying here it's not good for your everyday man and woman, is it? With retail being slashed in the way it is. Go to a supermarket, people are being replaced by machines on the checkout. Go to Amazon, and the robots are getting the better deal of the working conditions at Amazon. It's not a good time for workers, is it?
No, I mean, Amazon's cornering the market, no?
Yeah.
I think that's what you find. They're going into different sectors, and they are, monopolizing so much. You'd expect, the Mergers and Monopolies Commission in different countries to break them down, like they used to do 20, 30 years ago, yeah?
Yeah.
Because you don't want monopolies. You want healthy competition in the high street and within every sector. But they are monopolizing so many different areas, and they are bringing small and medium-sized enterprises to their knees because they have the purchasing power, the buying power, the capacity, and the financial clout to clean up in the sectors where they are strong.
Incredible phenomenon. Really an amazing time to be alive. Bon dia from Milton Keynes, from Ian Leo this morning, and Victoria saying, super gorgeous beach weather this week with warm ocean temperatures, just delightful. So having a bit of a dip over there is Victoria by the sound of it. Gary Orgles is here. Good morning. Bon dia, everyone. One more sleep, then I'm on my way back to Portugal to view houses. Fantastic, Gary. So I can hear the excitement in your message there. Bon dia a todos de relvas. Matty's been a bit quiet. I think he's been enjoying himself and chilling out in Portugal. So Amazon is the answer. I think ahead of us there with that. It can't be the answer. I mean, is that the world we want to live in? I mean, what do you see happening there? The monopolies and mergers commissions of the world aren't really addressing that. It has to be people power, doesn't it?
Interesting. It defies all logic, but what you find is the wealth gap is so large that you've got some powerful people that can be quite persuasive, and they have a lot of influence. They employ so many people globally that they have power, and if left unattended, then they're going to get more powerful, more wealthy, and but surprising that the commission, Mergers and Monopolies Commission, doesn't step in and try and break them down like they used to 20 years ago. That was commonplace, whether it was in the pharma sector or somewhere else, that would step in and say no, and if they wanted to acquire another business, they would stop them and say no, you can't acquire them because you have a share of the market, and then you don't have competitive pricing.
Yeah, who would have thought? Who would have thought that Bill Gates might have been looking at Amazon saying, that's not fair. But in my day, they stopped us doing stuff like this, and now
Absolutely.
Jeff's getting away with it.
But that's very true. In his day, they were stopped from being such a dominant, with a lot of the patents and Windows operating systems and everything.
Yeah.
There were all kinds of lawsuits flying in either direction because people wanted to be able to compete with the Microsofts of this world. But no, with Amazon, so far they've had a free run.
Yeah, absolutely. 80% is another one. 80% of my training offer is online. Happy Zooming. That would have been a good stock to buy, wouldn't it? If you'd invested in Zoom 2 or 3 years ago, that would have gone up nicely. What I don't understand, it's probably the same to say about Microsoft as well, that given Zoom's rising popularity and profitability, why haven't they improved their product more? I think Zoom is a terrible product. I mean, it's the one everyone uses. It was a bit like, VHS beat Betamax out of the market. It wasn't better. They just cornered the market in the way that Zoom are doing. And it's the same with Microsoft, perhaps, isn't it? It's not the best product, but it's the one that dominates and therefore just seems to proliferate.
Because it's not just about the product. It's about the ability to market and sell your product to make it attractive to would-be buyers. So you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't market it right and sell it the right way, then people might not buy it. So we tend to think in terms of the quality of the product. But what about marketing it to attract would-be buyers? And I think that's the secret to success is not just about the product, it's the ability to market and sell.
About the marketing and selling, absolutely right. So coming up later on in the show, I'm going to show you some real estate, talking about investment. My little contribution to this conversation, again, it's not advice, but a place to look at, certainly, if you are interested in investing in property in Lisbon, is Beato. I'm going to take you to look at this rather nice apartment. You can buy an apartment in this very happening part of town for 185,000 euros still. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later on. What's going on? Are you being offered a cup of tea or some breakfast there, Paul?
No, Alice, I was just, she's sitting beside me to my left, and I just say, look, this is the property you might want to have.
Stay tuned, Elise. Yes.
Yeah, she's a traveler, and she does her travel blogs, and she's an ace at that. Yeah. Alice has her own travel blog. She's just very humble. She's starting to blush, but she doesn't want the limelight and the spotlight.
We want the link to that. A travel blog would be of great interest to people.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. I would invite Elise to share her travel blog.
Please do, Elise.
She's a star. She's an absolute star, but she's very humble. So she's a bit embarrassed there. Hands over her head. No, don't do that.
We can't even see you, Elise. Don't worry. Okay.
You can't see.
We very happily put the link to your travel blog. People will be interested in that.
Yeah, it's a brilliant.
Jersey P is here as well, as is Drew in Australia. Good morning to you. Bon dia from you as well, Drew. Hank Stalica's here. Hola, bon dia, friends. Mike Campion, bon dia from Maastricht this morning. Good listening to Paul. A bit of a roller coaster in the markets presently. Interesting times. So, Mike, another fan of your contributions to the Good Morning Portugal show and our webinars, Paul. How has it been in the markets? What is going on? Why the roller coaster? Is it to do with Biden at the wheel?
No, well, I mean, Biden at the wheel is for different reasons, just as dangerous as Trump. Yeah, at least Trump was at the front of the car. Yeah, Biden is asleep, and he's a passenger sleeping at the back. So what's worse? I don't know. This maniac driving the car, or the guy falling asleep at the back. So your guess is as good as mine. But look, the markets are volatile by nature. I think we're seeing great volatility because there's this uncertainty. Is the global economy petering out, and the data coming in tends to suggest that the economy might be slowing. We're getting high inflation, but there's the Chinese market has collapsed because it has I think the debt level, the credit level is 3.5 times the size of the economy. So we're seeing a huge collapse in the Chinese stock market. Will that have a contagion effect globally? Inflation or deflation? will the US taper quantitative easing as they've suggested they would do at the last Fed meeting, or won't they, based on the data that is now coming through? Will they raise rates, which I don't think it will happen, because that would be, that would just lead to a market collapse. So there's so much uncertainty. The data is patchy at times. People are nervous. The US stock market in particular is grossly overvalued. So it's that uncertainty and volatility. And I don't think it's going to go away, because, fundamentally, the economy has been kept going. It's like someone who's dead but is on life support and no one wants to switch it off. So long as they keep the quantitative easing, they keep things going, the economy can continue. But at some point, someone has to make the difficult decision of switching off the life machine, which is tapering and the quantitative easing, keeping rates at zero. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and the fact that the Chinese market has dropped 30% in value 2030, and some analysts are saying, is that because they are leading indicator suggesting that the global economy will tank and stock markets will crash. So we are seeing that volatility, which is inevitable during periods of uncertainty. It's no great surprise to me, but investors think that it's a one-way street and it just goes in a straight line, but it doesn't. And one has to be patient and keep their wits about and keep, their heads, and not be, not expect miracles in a market where there's volatility. You just have to keep your head together and keep calm.
Interesting. That is such a chilling analogy of the world, sort of money body, lying there with various tubes coming in and out and being pumped full of money every now and then just to keep it alive. It's terrifying in a sense, isn't it? And obviously you have to be careful and plan for the long term in such a scenario. Although there's a kind of there's an irony there, isn't it? Planning for the long term of somebody on life support is a chilling analogy, Paul. And why is the data patchy? Why? You're talking about becoming digital. You're talking about the internet and how that's changed our lives. Why, in this age of flowing and instant information, is data patchy in the money markets? Why would it be like that?
No, patchy in the sense that it's it's not always consistent, right? So we're seeing a lot of inflation, but equally, we are seeing evidence in some countries that there could be that inflation is peaking, and one doesn't really know in what direction it's heading. And then they say they're going to taper, but if the economic data that comes in suggests that the economy is weaker than expected, then they have to revisit that decision. And the thing is that central banks haven't got the hand on the handle. The reality is that they've lost control, because they're trying to manipulate the economy through unconventional means and methods, which means that no one really knows how we're going to get out of this one. But one thing is for sure, there's a lot of that the global economies are washed with liquidity through tapering and quantitative easing, and we know that the central banks are between a rock and a hard place, because they say they're not going to taper, they're going to reduce their tapering, reduce the amount of quantitative easing and liquidity they put into the market. They buy mortgage-backed securities and they buy US treasuries. Central banks in other countries buy their own securities, right? And by buying their own securities, they suppress the interest rates and they keep them at zero. And they're saying we're going to stop injecting liquidity into the market. That will push interest rates higher. And the reality is, if countries have a lot of debt, there's debt servicing costs, so they can't afford to do that. So they're saying that they're going to take an action which they know full well that they can't take. So they're trapped.
My goodness.
They're trapped.
Two analogies, metaphors at work this morning: the financial body on life support, but also who's driving the bus. I mean, it sounds like Joe might be being chauffeured and might be asleep on the back seat. The money people are also towards the back of the bus, not wanting to take control of the wheel. Who's driving it, Paul?
God knows. I
Okay,
think
thank you
it's
for
God knows.
that. Okay, all right. It's that moment. It's that moment in our financial conversation where we look to the skies. Paul Williams is here this morning as well. Ponte Alegria from Amisti Peñascosa this morning, going for a bit of face-to-face retail therapy, and that's a good comment, Paul, because people still want that in this little neighbourhood that I'm in. Even though God forgive me, I went to Lidl last night. Another company that's killing it around the world and killing off small businesses. There are still small businesses around here. There are these cave-style mini markets, with the thinnest profile at the bottom of a building, and you go in and you've got everything you need in your locality of all the basics of groceries. And there's a man in there. I saw a bacon slicer, Paul. When was the last time you saw a bacon slicer? This man is slicing cold meat at the back of the shop. His mum and his wife and his daughter are working in the shop. This is the retail therapy that I like. This is supporting a local business. And I hope that they can weather the storm you're talking about. And they'll see this high street phenomenon come and go. And they will remain a really important part of local communities like this. Go on, what were you going to say?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. But the pace of life is so fast that, you try and declutter and simplify your life. For example, for the first time ever, last night, I ordered my groceries online for home delivery. And I think, you try and simplify your life. And I still shop at small ones, as you say, because that's part of the community. And I think you'd loathe to see them, go under.
Absolutely.
Unless we go slower rather than faster, I think, one has to find ways of making things easier.
Well,
And
it's
that's why
very
everyone
profound.
goes online.
It's very profound. So actually, maybe when it comes back to the bus, we need to park that bus up and reconsider where we're going. Don't keep
Absolutely.
driving. Stop the bus for a bit, everybody.
Yeah. And,
Think
and
about
reflect and reflect.
Yeah. Yes. Good work this morning, Paul. Good work. And Felicia's are the happy wanderers. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, midlife. What do you think about hard assets like gold and silver? Thunder Duck has a great question for you there, Paul. What do you think of hard assets?
Well, I love that question because my view has not changed one bit. I think what we find is, again, it requires great patience because, gold and silver can be, for an investor, it tires you because it's not going anywhere. It's moved in the wrong direction during the summer. But notwithstanding that, the gold and silver miners are so heavily undervalued and discounted, both from a technical perspective and from a fundamental perspective. They are heavily discounted. And, it's a question of time before they start rallying again. And it's going to be a big up leg, I think, in terms of the next rally in gold and silver. So anyone with liquidity, they should buy not necessarily gold and silver, but the gold and silver miners, because it's one of the sectors that gives the best yields. And we just need to be very, very patient and keep buying at these levels because they are heavily discounted. And, the big asset allocators like the pension funds and, investors and traders, eventually they'll realize that, which assets are overpriced and which are undervalued, and they will buy the cheap ones. And gold and silver are perfectly positioned to rally considerably because, as I said, they're very, very cheap. But, if you're looking for, I'll buy now and it goes up tomorrow, then don't buy. Be patient because it's a very volatile asset. It's a very volatile period, but they are heavily undervalued. Heavily undervalued.
Okay, and Mike's adding to this. Paul, what is your view on holding precious metals? I think that came in whilst we were talking there. Gold, palladium. I'm talking physically around 10% of portfolio. Would you have that as a good percentage of your portfolio?
Well, I'll tell you what we have. We have 25% in gold and silver miners, and we have 10% in industrial metals, including palladium, nickel, aluminium. Look at aluminium, how the prices have gone through the roof. And the price is going to continue going up because, there's supply chain disruptions during COVID and the demand after the reopening of global economies. I think we will see a lot of those base industrial metals and the shift to the green economy. So that's the space to be in for the patient investor, not for the it's gone down 10% because it will be volatile.
Yeah.
That's not the idea. Investing is not about I buy today and the market goes in my favor on day one and I just make the money on day 10 and I cash it in. Life doesn't work like that. Patience is key here. But I would agree with Mike and some of the other subscribers. Gold, silver, industrial metals, definitely buy and hold and be patient. That would be my message this morning.
All right, so there you go, Thunder and Mike. Don't mention, I can't remember which C word I used the M word, Microsoft. But then there is the silver mist, and I'm not sure that's what that's in connection with there. You might be able to help me with that, Paul. But we have been chatting quite a lot, and the comments have been coming in thick and fast. Let's deal with a few of them. What is a good amount of investment savings to make a move? A retired couple thinking about life in Porto. Is that too general a question from Eric there, and too Portugal specific, possibly, Paul?
My first question would be, what is the time horizon?
Okay.
What are the, you would need to understand a bit more what the financial position is. Time horizon, we would need to risk assess to understand, the return expectations and their tolerance to risk, because that goes all hand in hand. It has to be, if they're very risk averse, they shouldn't put anything in. And what is their liquidity like? What is their expenditure pattern? What is their income that they're getting in? How much do they have for long-term investments? So I can't answer that question without having the full picture.
Okay, so what's needed there, Eric, by the sound of it, is to talk to somebody like Paul and do a good audit. What are your life expectations? What are the short-term and long-term outlooks? What are you trying to achieve, basically, and what's behind the question there? But Eric, feel free to reach out to Paul or a similar financial wealth management company. Bon dia from Louise. Good morning to you, Louise. Thank you for your message this morning. Really appreciate that. I'm assuming, says Francis, because of such low interest rates in Portugal, there's no point in saving your money in the bank. What are some other options? I've never really explored investment. So this is a great question from Francis. Not everyone's that fussed about money, are they? But you can't live without it. And there comes a time where you're thinking, hold on a minute, if I put my money in the bank here, it's close to pointless. Would you recommend something other than a savings account in the current with the current interest rates as they are?
I think it's a brilliant question from Francis. I totally agree, but I think it's the same scenario as we've just described.
Right.
What is this situation? But yes, having a bank account paying 0.5% or 0.25% or whatever they pay, and inflation running riot as it is now, in real terms, it's devaluing the money. So, but again, it depends on your tolerance to risk and your investment horizon. If you're looking 10 years, then 5 years, 3, it depends. But there's areas you can invest now for the longer term and take advantage. Look, we said China has fallen, the stock market has collapsed. It might fall even further. Those corrections are great entry points for investors with a long-term mindset.
Yes,
that's what I would say.
Okay, and you have had your eye on Chinese companies, haven't you? So that now might be another look at those.
I think NEO, we've talked about NEO and it's fallen 11%, but equally, those shares we covered, there was 3, Ternium, who's a steel producer. We bought them in July. We closed them yesterday for clients, 30% up in 2 months. There's Avast, which is, as you know, cybersecurity and PC security and all that. And there's, there was a third one, again, gone up 30%. Advanced Micro Devices, AMD. And they've gone up 30, we're closing it, bang. And then we wait, NEO has come down. Does that make it a bad investment? No. Patience is key. It's maybe an opportunity. It's an opportunity to buy a bit more. Remember, you average down as the market goes down. It's not to be, I'm taking all my money away. The market has gone down. Yeah, it will. But it's a brilliant opportunity to buy even more and position myself for the long term.
My 2 penneth on this, Francis. I want to see some social investing. I really do. I think if people could be lent money who really need it, who can clearly pay it back but don't fulfill the standard criteria. People who've rented successfully for years and could have a chance at buying a property. They sometimes find themselves out the criteria of the standard lending establishments, because it's about trust, isn't it? And it's about reliability. And people don't know each other, they ask for a more stringent level of guarantee, don't they? Or they just won't take the risk. And I would love to see, whilst some people have got money sloshing about, as it were, that isn't going to earn anything in an investment account, a savings account, if that could be invested socially, with real people, such that their life chances could be improved, and we could find a way of doing that safely and reliably and in a trustworthy manner. There's money to be made in that, isn't there? There's social advantage to be gained, absolutely, but there's also money to be made. There is a little bit of usury possibly going on in that, but that's no bad thing if it's a win-win for everybody. So, but it's finding the systems for that, isn't it? And I think the blockchain is quite healthy in that way, as a way of establishing that sort of trust between people who you might not know. So I've got big hopes for the blockchain, and I'm looking forward to much more social investment where your money can really make a difference, and you're not necessarily having to invest in a big pharma company or Amazon or Microsoft to see a return, but you're doing something good with your money that affects everyday people, is what I would add to that. Sir, I took 2 doses of Covaxin in India. Is Covaxin allowing me to enter into Portugal or not? The question there is it's more about the testing than the type of vaccine you're taking. That's Ask Anything About Portugal question, India. I hope that's helpful. We've covered Mike's question, and Gary is welcoming Eric home to Portugal here, spiritual home. Look at this. Here's a message from a wife to a husband. Come home, we have son, and bring coffee, perhaps, as well, and milk. My plan after moving to Portugal is to keep half of the money from Amsterdam apartment sale as savings. Should I keep it in a bank or invest? I guess you're going to refer, Matty, to that same answer as before, right?
Absolutely.
How risk averse are you? What's your long-term strategy?
Absolutely. But the money, remember that the key here is the money has to work for you.
Yeah.
Especially in an inflationary environment where in real terms, inflation is eroding the value of money. Yeah. Okay.
Project Frugal Vinny here. Hi, Paul. Would 300,000 euros provide enough income from investments within Portugal to survive, assuming we purchased a home in Portugal, or would we likely need some more? There's 2 adults and 1 child there. Again, is it too difficult to not know what their circumstances and requirements are to make a call on that?
Well, it requires. I mean, what age are they? Are they 40 and they're planning to retire now on 300,000, or are they 70? Again, it's all about in what context and having the full information. So 300,000 seems a very small amount. People think, they have 1 million, and I think it's nowadays, money is, and what is their spending pattern? Do they spend 50,000 a year? Or they're very frugal and spend 20,000 a year? And it's all those nuances that determine whether 300,000 is enough or not. But I would think that the fact that they mentioned 1 child, they're young enough, and 300,000, again, unless they have other sources of income and they plan to continue working, we need to understand what their circumstances are to be able to provide a proper response to that question.
All right, and I'm going to put your contact details on the screen now, Paul. Please. People who want to have a chat with you should go here. Go to expatsportugal.com. Go to our business directory and look under wealth management, and then you can make an appointment with Paul. I'm laughing because Project Frugal are very frugal. So that's a great start. Fantastic, Paul. Say Fiona and Simon. Bon dia, Carl from Loy Long. We just missed each other, didn't we? If you have sold a house in the country and could take at least a year to buy it in Portugal, do you have to just suck up the depreciation of your money? Is there anything you can do for the short period? Now, this is a position people will find themselves in. This is being exposed to the low value of money, isn't it? You've had a good asset in your house. You've sold it because you've got an agreeable price. But then it hurts a little bit, doesn't it? Because you're not seeing the appreciation of your money in the form of the housing asset. And you're just seeing it dwindling and languishing in the bank. What can you do? Suck it up, as you say here.
I would say one thing, people are I think we all wired that way. We all want to own our property, But sometimes from a, if we think about it rationally, you don't need to own your property because you can rent, and then you've got the free assets from a sale of another property you can use to drive income, right?
Yeah.
And you could buy a property, but do you buy the property for yourself, or do you buy it as an asset to produce income because you rent it out? And those are the things that people need to consider.
Yeah, and as Robert Kiyosaki says, owning a house, if you live in it, is not an investment, is it? It's a liability.
It's a liability. You speak to any investment guru, they'll tell you that you'd be better off renting.
Yeah, very interesting. And renting in somewhere like Lisbon as well, having a fantastic and interesting life. Question for Paul: what range of investment returns do you expect for USA and global stock markets over the next decade? Come on, Paul. There's a good one.
Well, I think we're entering a period of great uncertainty, but remember that one thing is the stock market generally, another thing is the sectors within the stock market. Some sectors do well in periods of uncertainty and periods of economic decline, and others do very poorly. So you can't just look at the overall market. Sometimes you have to look at which sectors perform well in the environment we're in. Which is why gold and silver is one of them, but there's other sectors that potentially could do extremely well in the environment that we're in now. And don't look at the headline stock market, but try and find pockets of value and sectors that are going to perform well.
Thank you for that question. Thanks for getting in touch as well, Jeff. I will get back to you. We've been inundated with responses to the launch of our full-on Expats Portugal plan, hand-holding, cheerleading, and sometimes butt-kicking people who want to make the journey to Portugal. So I'll be back in touch with all of you who very kindly got in touch with me after the video I made next to the tram yesterday, the 28 tram in Lisbon. It was an iconic moment as I was making my video for you yesterday. Here's an interesting input from, I think this is from Fiona and Simon. It is looking for investment opportunities as I don't like a lot of cash around the house. I'd refer you to the earlier answers. Cash lying around the house ain't going to do much for you. Here's another alternative. The multicolored trainers are coming into stock this week in the UK at Lidl. Now, they can appreciate massively, but not if you wear them out. They've got to be box fresh and pristine to be resold on eBay, I think. Those sorts of investments are fascinating, aren't they, Paul? Collectibles. There's a lot of money to be made in that. But again, you have to be long-term. Most people go into it thinking short-term, don't they? And they get stung and they think, what's this all about? I can't make any money. But it's all roads seem to point to the long term, don't they? For any series,
the impact of the compounded effect. Everything you're doing in life, right? If you train once and then you don't go to the gym for the next 6 months and train again, it has no impact whatsoever. If you eat healthily for 2 days and then binge for another 30 and then try again, you don't benefit from the compounded effect, right? But if you eat sensibly every day with your veg and your fruit, you go to the gym continuously, then 6 months from now you see an immediate benefit. It's doing it consistently, religiously, keep going, and the same with investments. It is that long-term mind frame about doing the right things continuously and looking at the benefit of the compounded effect, because that's what it is. With every day that you do the right thing, it has a huge incremental there's an incremental value.
Or as Jeff would put it, keep calm and carry on. It's great advice.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? 5 words there. That's basically what you're saying. Paul's saying from one Paul to another, can you pass me the happy tablets? I guess that would be a great investment. Happy tablets do seem to keep their value, don't they? Pharmaceutical companies seem to be doing quite well out of those. Keep my money in US dollars or switch to the euro? There's a great question from John Gibson. Moving to Portugal, hoping to buy a home in December. What do you think about the dollar?
I'm very surprised the dollar hasn't depreciated in value, but there's a reason for that, and the reason is that whilst the US is probably leading the way in terms of its debt mountain is growing very rapidly, and the quantitative easing and the pumping of liquidity into the system, which devalues money, because if you increase supply of something relative to demand, then the value goes down, whether it's a good, a product, or money. but other countries are still doing their own quantitative easing. So they're all devaluing. They're all devaluing their or diluting the monetary base. That's why we haven't seen that huge decline in the dollar yet. But I think it's coming because it's gone through the Senate, a 1 trillion infrastructure bill. It's going through the House of Representatives on the 27th of September. And once that is approved, and I think it's now more of a formality, because on both sides of the house they've found some compromise. The next one to follow is a 3.5 trillion, another stimulus plan for 3.5 that goes through the Senate in the autumn. I mean, that level of borrowing, so they have to increase the debt ceiling. Remember, a lot of countries have debt ceilings, and it requires approval from the lawmakers that they are happy to increase the debt ceiling. Once you pump another and you take on debt for another 4.5 trillion, I think that could weaken the US dollar significantly. So if I was a betting man, I would say the dollar is overvalued and we should expect some kind of devaluation within the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. Okay, John, if you haven't already got an account with Spartan, who are our FX foreign exchange partners, it might be worth having a chat with them. And so you're ready to make the switch as and when you want to. You can also find them, as you can, Paul, and Fiduciary Wealth Management in the business directory. Find Spartan in there as well. So last one for you. I'm sure you've got things to do over there in Gibraltar, Paul. Yeah. It's been very good of you to give us so much time this morning. In your opinion, is it better to seek weaker markets to invest in, like the French invest in Portugal? Should we invest in lower value demographics opposed to Lisbon, for example? Interesting. So sort of making or exploiting a weaker market. Do you recommend such a move?
In terms of what, stock markets, property markets, or what is it exactly?
I think it's a general question, but I mean, if you stick to your area, there, do you go looking far and wide? And I mean, if you're looking, as you said before, for the undervalued, you might find that in an entirely different culture, mightn't you?
Well, you look for undervalued assets that are going to perform well in this environment, but equally, you know, again, it depends on what you think. If you think we are entering stagflation and an inflationary period, then you want to buy real hard assets that are going to appreciate, and that's in addition to gold and silver, you have real estate and so on. So yeah, I my way of looking at these things is always looking at the macroeconomic environment, trying to read the macroeconomic environment and understand it the best way possible, and then finding those pockets of value, and there are pockets of value, and buying cheap. I'm not a great believer in chasing trends because it happens in a nanosecond. You bought and sold, and there's day traders making money out of that, and it's not our space. So always keep the longer term in mind. That's always a very good advice, I think.
There you go. Slow and steady wins the race as ever.
Absolutely.
Paul Correa,
the tortoise. The tortoise or the hare, and it's always a tortoise, yeah?
He's got a hard shell.
Absolutely.
Yes. Paul, thank you so much. Great to have you back. Great to talk to you. See you soon on the webinar, the upcoming webinar, where I'm sure you will be dazzling us again with a few ideas. And we always like to talk to people who are getting into investment and want to know the basics. And you're very happy to share that sort of insight. So we'll see you then, my friend.
Thank you, Carl. God bless. Thank you for having me.
And maybe if Elise could put in her blog link into the comments.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to her now. She's a very humble, but I'm going to persuade her.
Okay, mate. See you soon.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Okay.
There we go. Paul from Fiduciary Wealth Management, or FWM as we call them. Beato is having a reconstruction by the waterside, investing in apartments for migrants with dollars and euros and pounds. That's where I am, Andy, at the moment. Have been overwhelmed by your comments this morning. Let's see what we've got to look at before we go this morning. And we haven't, in all honesty, answered a lot of the Ask Anything About Portugal questions. So I feel it is my duty to address those, reinstate them, reassert them in the comments at the end of the comment trail, and we'll get around to doing those. And I know that some of the stalwarts of this community will help as well with that. But I do want to share with you, what did I show you yesterday? We have a couple of picks from this most incredible it was a military facility on the water here for creating food to send to Africa. Basically, that's how it was described to me. And look at the size of that oven there. I also need to get rid of Paul's gone now, so we can get rid of that, Carl. Well done. And actually, we can probably get rid of the banner as well, asking for more questions. So let's just stay with this for the time being now. I'm broadcasting live from Beato. And just around the corner from me, this is in Lisbon, on the waterfront, and just down the road from me in a disused building is this incredible part of Portugal's heritage, where they used to bake bread here in Portugal to send to Africa to the troops in the colonies there. I've got another one of these for you. There's another longer view of the room where they're baking all this bread. Quite extraordinary. These buildings are amazing. They are being turned into creative work hubs and accommodation. Actually, let me share with you for a moment. What's this called? There's a particular company. I went on a course a few years ago, and it was Startup Lisboa's course, and they took us to. That's why I've got those photographs, because they took us to this amazing part of town. Oh, it's the Hub Criativo Beato. Okay, so let me just show you this first on the screen, and oh, it won't let me do it. Let me just try that one more time. You can hear the building work going on around me, I think, if I stop for a moment. Drilling constantly from 7 in the morning until 1 in the morning at the moment. Not everyone's cup of tea, but this area is humming and buzzing. So Hub Criativo Beato is I think part of the engine of redevelopment in this neighborhood, in this area here. I'm in the neighborhood of Marvila as well, which is close to. They almost seem interchangeable. The amazing brewery Musa is here, where loads of people come, lots of tourists, but lots of local people as well. And Hub Criativo de Beato has one past and many futures. Memories are preserved. The future is shaped. The present is the only possible future, for it is the only one we can shape. The future is here every day. So this is what we're looking at here. This incredible development now, and it's been in progress certainly since I first visited in 2018, I believe, in the spring of 2018, and work continues intensely around here. So in 2016, I'm reading here from hubcreativobeato.com's website. In 2016, the local authority put forward a proposal to the government which aimed to transfer the right of use of the southern wing of that Portuguese army industrial complex that I mentioned before, which had reached its climax during the colonial war and which had been deactivated for more than a decade, to fit into its city economy and innovation strategy and transform it into a focal point for the promotion of entrepreneurship and creativity, deeply intertwined with local dynamics, a nice nod to preserving all that's good and great about this Portuguese neighborhood, and that would add the best practices in terms of digital, technological, and creative industries in Portugal and worldwide. That is a rather marvelous vision, I think, and that's what's underpinning the work that's going on around here, this intense work that's going on around here that you can hear behind me right now. And part of the result of that is that a lot of conversions are going on in the older buildings around here into apartments, and I want to share one with you this morning. Now, this is a T2. Oops, I just ended my own show. I don't know how I did that. I think I just pressed the leave the studio button. That's not what I meant to do. Now, Victoria, she's that sort of person who recognizes these sorts of trends. Beato is the hotspot. Can't wait to check it out. Absolutely right. Good idea, Carl. Create a socio-economic cooperative. Yeah, thank you for that. I think wouldn't that be great? Project Frugal says, thanks, Paul. Paul was great, and thank you for your answers, guys. Is it easy to cross the border into Gibraltar now? We have to go there, but last time we tried to schedule a trip, they were requiring 10 days of isolation. We've missed him. I'm so sorry there, Kate. Would love to invest in 10 small businesses if it helps with the visa. Now, wouldn't that be, and I'm just having a little bit of a digression here, but wouldn't that be amazing if Portugal allowed you to do that? I know that you can invest in one business. It may be that they will look at it case by case and do such a thing, Fiona and Simon Wright. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And while we're on that matter, Last call for the Coastal Golden Visa. This is our webinar for this coming Thursday, 7:30 usual time until 9. Changes to Portugal's Golden Visa are coming soon. Find out all you need to know before it's too late. And Daniel Reyes of Reyes and Pelicano will be with us to talk about that on Thursday. So back to Beato, where I am right now with the sound of the drills. It feels like they're coming in from next door. It's quite extraordinary, but I'm with it. I'm loving the buzz. The kids are loving the buzz. It's like the kids have been drinking coffee. Such is the hum and buzz of this place. It's really marvelous. And we've been in the local cafes where local people eat. Sounding a bit like League of Gentlemen now, isn't it? But it is so great that there are still local shops and cafes here. And something Paul said earlier on about how it's important to patronize local businesses. The drilling stops around 12:30 here because the local workmen go to the cafes and have a proper lunch. This to me is one of the many things I love about Portugal, but this is one of them, and it's a big one. The working fellas here, and it is mainly fellas, get into the local cafes and have the prato do dia. And they have beers and they have wine and they have 3 courses at lunchtime. And they have a great lunch. They have a proper lunch. And when you think about it, isn't that a great thing socially? Isn't that a great thing culturally? But isn't it a great thing economically as well? You're looking at, buying the menu of the day, the prato do dia, the set meal, or they might have a steak, or they might have a grilled fish or something like that. And they're looking at around, I don't know, €8 or something like that for a 3-course meal. And these guys, they do it. It looks like they do it every lunchtime. I love this culture so much. But anyway, back to the apartment that you can buy currently in this part of town. It is a T2, and the company also one of the little companies locally, a rather nice little corner shop, which is actually a real estate agent, and they are called Vegas and Vegas. And I want to bring onto the screen this T2 for you in Beato and show you what you can get for €185,000 at the moment. Okay, so come in closer. These pictures are fairly good, and we've laughed before, haven't we, at Portuguese property pictures. Thank you very much to Vegas and Vegas, a corner shop just a couple of minutes from me here, right in the heart of Marvila Beato. And this is a nice looking apartment, I think, nice and bright and airy, nicely finished. €185,000, folks. T2, that means 2 bedrooms, okay? Decida Preso, is that a discounted price? They're trying to get that moved. Isn't it lovely and light and airy, looking at a bit of a loft vibe going on there? Could make a good Airbnb letting as well, couldn't it? Or it could just be your nice pied-à-terre in Lisbon here whilst you visit, when you spend your months of the year in Lisbon, or come and stay here and enjoy, as we know, you can spend months and years touring around the rest of Portugal with this as your base in Beato. One of the interesting things about properties here is they're quite thin. Now, I'm thinking to myself, it's one of those two, or you've got 2 front doors. From what I know of local property here, it's one of those front doors, and it's quite a thin apartment. That's how it seems to work around here. So there you go. Just scroll back through those pictures. €185,000 buys you a property of this kind in a very upcoming and exciting part of Lisbon, and Portugal for that matter. You're on the waterfront. You can take the 7:28 bus along to Praça do Comercial, to Caixa de Sodré, to Alcântara, to the LX factory. You see the iconic April 25th bridge. You see the great what is it called? The Jesus Tower looking out across the city as well. The Cristo do Rei, looking out over the city, blessing the city. This is an exciting part. This is an exciting city, and this is an exciting part of the city. So there you go. You got to get in touch with David Baptista. Mention the Good Morning Portugal show, and he'll be thinking, what's that? But there you go. In Beato, T2, 78 square meters, €185,000. I think that's quite amazing, and you can be part of this incredible phenomenon that is the Beato regeneration. Let's go to your final comments. It's 4 minutes past 10 this morning. It's a duplex. It's a bit small. Yeah, I guess for a pied-à-terre, it's got everything you might need, but it's not huge in its proportions. Absolutely right there, Margarita. Margarita might know a better bargain actually locally. Thank you, Paul and Carl from Jim White. Good morning to you, Jim. How did your call go last night? We want to interview you too on Spiritual Portugal. It's a bit small. It's a duplex. Sorry, more comments have come in. Always look forward to Paul's observations and advice, says Cindy B. Hey up, Cindy. And yes, Beato is a hot spot. Let's see. What have I missed this morning? I know I've missed a lot this morning. Do forgive me for that. But let's see. Joao. Hello, Joao. Good morning, Carl and Paul. Always happy to hear an expert's opinion. Thank you. Gary Austin saying, I think the biggest problem with the world over the past 50 years is everyone is looking for short-term profit and very few are looking for long-term investment. Everyone wants to get rich quick without much thought for the future. That's a pretty good vignette and assessment. I think, Gary, I would agree with you there. Taobao was a good site to buy direct from China, just like eBay. Interesting. Did you actually use it, Fiona and Sam? It's all about the trust thing, isn't it? I guess once you've made a few safe transactions, you stay on there, just like we did with eBay. Who knew that was going to work? Property is still in the long term the best investment, says Paul, and I think many would agree with you. What's the safest way to move gold, silver to Portugal? I might have an answer for you on that sometime soon, Fiona and Simon. Stay tuned. I would like to look at investment in hydrogen fuel technology. Any tips? Are you starting a little laboratory in your basement there, Gary? Have you got any space left in the man cave for doing such a project? And last couple of comments then. Zoom has lots of competition. I use Jitsi, I think is fantastic. JITSI. I have 5 similar platforms that are used frequently. Microsoft Teams is huge in business. Boo. And Slack in academia, etc. No, I get it. I think Jitsi is my favorite. It's a really nice open source bit of kit. Not a fan of Teams and not a fan of Zoom. For that price, I get 6 hectares in central Portugal. You do, absolutely right, Matty. But it's apples and oranges comparison there, I think. You don't get the Beato buzz, I don't think. And if you could do both, wouldn't that be a great life? Have your 6 hectares in rural Portugal where you can go and chill for a lot of your life and grow things, and then have the occasional weekend in the throbbing heart of the metropolis. That is Beato. Anyway, let's leave it there for now, guys. I'm going to go out and enjoy this part of the world this morning, and we'll see you tomorrow morning where we will have Jackie and Andy with us, expats who've made their home in Portugal, one more recently than the other, talking about schooling and education with Andy, talking to Jackie about making the transition post-Brexit. I don't know if she caught it right, but we'll find out tomorrow morning. Can't beat a percentage of your investments in Bitcoin. I'm surprised, Max. 10 minutes, almost past 10, and Bitcoin and crypto hasn't. I did mention the blockchain, but no mention of crypto so far. And I was looking at my mini investments on Revolut that I did on an earlier webinar with Paul, investing in some precious metal mining companies, and also investing in Coinbase. Coinbase has crashed, as you might have expected at the moment, down 28%. The Harmony gold mining company that I was inspired to invest in, my $10 is down to $8.28, overall down 17%. And Kinross, which was one of Paul's tips, I mean, I'm not knocking him because he's talking about long term, but that's down 12 at the moment, from $10 to $8.78. But my crypto is hodling nicely. I would agree with you, Max. I would agree with you, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. Hank saying, Cindy, have a great day. You guys from Hank. Oh, it's a boa night from him as he goes off and has sweet dreams about Portugal. And Andrea saying, great show. Thank you so much. Market volatility. Then last word from The Economist. Market volatility has little to do with Biden. Big change. It seems that little has little to do with Biden, really, right? A figurehead. That's how it works in the United States. But I don't want to open that can of worms right now. People talk about Reagan and Obama early on in the comments, I noticed. Big changes are coming in monetary policy in all major economies. So valuations are adjusting in bonds, stocks, ETFs, etc., and private equity. Thank you, Kate. We look forward to speaking to you again soon. And I know that many of your ideas are at odds with some of Paul's ideas as well. Maybe it'd be a good idea to get you both on the show together. That'd be quite exciting. And I'm going to leave you with this one. Have a joyful day, everyone. Yeah, do have a great day. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning. And, of course, the webinar. Book up for that. If you are interested in the Golden Visa, it is the last call for the Coastal golden visa. So changes are coming soon. Find out more about them with Daniel Reyes of Reyes and Pelicano tomorrow night on the webinar. Have a joyful day, everybody. Take care and bye for now. Ciao, ciao. Ciao for now.